Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, continuing in our series through the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, we'll begin reading in verse 6. Proverbs 6 and verse 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. And tonight's message from the book of Proverbs is lessons from the ant. Lessons from the ant. And there are lessons to learn from the ant here in the book of Proverbs as it is described. Lessons from the ant. And the ant is a very fascinating creature. I think that's why the Lord obviously created the ant to be a fascinating creature. But I think that's why, one of the reasons why the ant is set forth here as an example to the sluggard in particular, but we can all learn something from the ant. And there are some fascinating facts about ants that I'll give you. First of all, ants can carry objects 50 times their own body weight in their jaws. Ants use their diminutive size to their advantage. Relative to their size, their muscles are thicker than those of larger animals or even humans. This ratio enables them to produce more force and carry larger objects. If you had muscles in the proportions of ants, you'd be able to heave a Hyundai over your head, a Hyundai car, presumably. This is from, this particular list is from ThoughtCo. And number 2, soldier ants use their heads to plug the entrances to their nests and keep intruders at bay. And so that's they can block the nest. In certain ant species, the soldier ants have modified heads shaped to match the nest entrance. They block access to the nest by sitting just inside the entrance with their heads functioning like a cork in a bottle. When a worker ant returns to the nest, it touches the soldier ant's head to let the guard know it belongs to the colony. Some ants defend plants in exchange for food and shelter, and of course we know this is how God created them. It's not that the ant and plant have a mutual agreement. You know, the plant walks up to the ant, or the ant walks up. That'd be really something if the plant walked up to the ant. The ant walks up to the plant. Well, can I defend you in exchange for food and shelter? And the plant says, oh yeah, sure. No, it doesn't work that way. It's God created, designed these things to function this way. Ant plants are plants with naturally occurring hollows where ants can take shelter or feed. These cavities may be hollow thorns, stems, or even leaf petioles. The ants live in the hollows, feeding on sugary plant secretions or the excretions of sap-sucking insects. What do the plants get for providing such luxurious accommodations? The ants defend the plant from herbivorous mammals and insects, and may even prune away parasitic plants that attempt to grow on the host plant. Number 4, the total biomass of all the ants on earth is roughly equal to the total biomass of all people on earth. In other words, the amount of space and the volume of living ants is about the same as the volume of living people on earth. How can this be? Ants are so tiny and we are so big. But scientists estimate there are at least 1.5 million ants on the planet for every human being. Over 12,000 species of ants are known to exist on every continent except Antarctica. Most live in tropical regions. A single acre of Amazon rainforest may house 3.5 million ants. Ants sometimes herd or tend insects of other species. Some ants enslave other ants. Number 7, ants lived along the dinosaurs, which that's not a surprise if you believe in 6-day creation, that ants would live along the dinosaurs. Now to them, They're saying ants evolved some 130 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. But we would know, just read the Bible, you'd say, well, certainly ants lived on the earth with dinosaurs, not a surprise. But number 8, ants started farming long before humans. Now, I'm not sure this is accurate either. Fungus farming ants began their agricultural ventures about 50 million years before humans thought to raise their own crops. So we certainly would not subscribe to that as well. But anyway, the point is that ants do farming, the way they get their food, and we'll see that in the scripture tonight. Some ants form super colonies that can stretch for thousands of miles. There's a type of there's Argentine ants, native to South America, now inhabit every continent except Antarctica due to accidental introductions. Each ant colony has a distinctive chemical profile that enables members of the group to recognize each other and alerts the colony to the presence of strangers. Scientists recently discovered that massive super colonies in Europe, North America, and Japan all share the same chemical profile, meaning they are in essence a global super colony of ants. And then National Geographic had a little tidbit on their website that said that in 2000 in Argentina the largest nest of ants was found that was over 3,700 miles wide. Wow. And so that's amazing. And then number 10, scout ants lay scent trails to guide others to food. That is how, you get one ant coming into your house and finds a little piece of food, and then all of a sudden, well, where did all these other ants come from? Because they laid a scent trail. And then National Geographic also said that the trapjaw ant can close its jaw at 140 miles per hour. 140 miles per hour. That's fast. And so those are some interesting facts about ants. Ants are very unique, interesting creatures, but the Bible speaks of them here in a good way, that the ant should be an example to us. Now, what I'm trying to look for is what happened to my sermon notes, not the notes about ants. Here it is. I knew I had it right in front of me. Lessons from the ant. First of all, in Proverbs chapter 6, we'll see, first of all, the student of the ant. Who needs to learn from the ant? Who should learn from the ant? First of all, in this particular verse, there's a directive given to a particular type of person. And in verse 6 it says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard." Thou sluggard. Now think of where the word sluggard comes. That's, we get there's a little creature called a slug. And how fast does a slug move? Not very quickly. And how much can a slug get accomplished in the same amount of time that an ant accomplishes something, comparatively speaking, to an ant? Not very much. You see ants, they're moving, they're busy, and the slugs just, doesn't really have anywhere to be, apparently. And so same thing with the sloth, when someone's considered slothful. And so those things go along with the animals that have those names, the sloth and the creature called the slug. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Now there are more and more sluggards and slothful people in society, in the world today. As we have a culture that is really in a lot of ways blessed with many conveniences, many things, there's a lot of things we don't have to work as hard to do, that people had to work harder for not too many years ago, but years ago and in previous decades, so that it gives an opportunity for people to not be as active. And what can happen is, being a sluggard is addictive. Being slothful is addictive. Someone gets into the habit of being a sluggard, being slothful. It's really hard for people to break out of that, because it's just not good for their mind and their body. And then it just takes a purposeful decision that they're not going to be that way, that it's time to get up and do something. And it's better for the mind to get up and do something. It's better for the body to get up and do something. But the sluggard, the slothful person, is one who is just no motivation, does not move quickly. They just move so slowly. They don't get their muscles moving. They don't get their bodies moving. And that is the person who should be the greatest student of the ant. Okay, sluggard. Okay, slothful person. Look at the ant. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. It's interesting, it says, go to the ant, thou sluggard. So actually, go. Get up and go. Actually do something to look at the ant. Take some effort into even considering the ant. Look at the ant. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. So God didn't even have it written down where it's, here's the ant, sluggard. Look at the ant. Consider the ant. No, it's go to the ant. Go look at the ant. Well, Josiah's not a sluggard, but I was using him as an example. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. So first of all, there needs to be that movement. Go to the ant. Go to the ant. Take the effort. Make the effort to go to the ant. And then consider her ways. So first of all, you got to go. Then you got to think. And then you got to actually put it into practice. Those three things are really hard for the sluggard. Those three things are really hard for the slothful person. To go, that means get moving, get up and move. You got to go. Consider, to think, and then be wise. It's to put it into practice. Consider her ways and be wise. And being wise means that sluggard recognizes that the ant's way is the good way. The ant's way is a better way, that there are things that can be learned from the ant, not just to know in the mind, to think about, but also to put into practice. What are the ways of the ant? So number 2, the ways of the ant. And these would be the lessons, really the lessons from the ant directly. But number 2, the ways of the ant. So first of all, the student of the ant should be the sluggard. We can all learn from the ant, but particularly the sluggard needs to learn from the ant. And number 2, the ways of the ant. What are the ways of the ant? Verse 7, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. So notice some things about the ant. There is self-motivation and self-direction in the life of the ant. In other words, the ant is a self-starter. The ant does not need someone to direct her, to direct it every time. Every time something needs to be done, the ant doesn't have a boss that's just saying, okay, go here, do this, go here and do that. So what our goal in life should be is in our work that we take the initiative to actually recognize the things that need to be done without having to be told every specific little thing. Now, it's always nice when, let's say, when there's maybe we're doing work for someone else, or that they set forth their expectations. And you don't want to miss anything. You want to make sure you know what you're supposed to do and that you're not missing anything. So there's nothing wrong with having expectations set forth of, okay, don't miss this, don't miss that. But it should not be a constant having to, well, it's now go do this, now go do this, now go do this. When I was, I guess it'd be my second job as a teenager, my first job was feeding cows and bedding their stalls. Thankfully, my sister somehow, I don't know how this happened, I don't think it was me, somehow she had the job of cleaning out the stalls. And I got to just run the machine, shooting the newspaper to bed the stalls. So that was better than cleaning them. But I did have to scoop up the old food that the cows did not eat, and it would get all nasty with water, and when they would put their noses there and push the thing for the water, and the water would then get out over onto the food, and it would just get nasty after a while after the feeding, so you had to give them fresh food. It's time to feed them. This person who owned the farm then hired me to work at the store he had purchased maybe just a couple of years prior, I forget now, and he still owns the store. I actually just talked to him the other day, saw him the other day in Pennsylvania. But anyway, I still do remember this, and that I got into the habit. Now, I think this was still when I was fairly new at the store and was still certainly a younger man and just fresh into the whole employment thing. With the farm, my sister and I, we just knew what we had to do. We had certain things we did, and we did it. In the store, there were a variety of things that would need to be done, so not every day was exactly the same. And so I remember still when I would go do something, just habitually I'd kind of come back to the owner's office, just kind of be standing there, and we might be chatting a little bit or something. But if I remember correctly, and I don't remember all of this, but over time, it got to the point where I was just better at doing the things that needed to be done around and not coming back to the owner's door. I don't remember all the sequence of events and circumstances surrounding that. There were certainly that point of time in my life was a very valuable time, things that I did right and things that I didn't do right. And it's helped me then for working other places and other areas since then. And so the point was that it's not something that an employer will want their employees to do all the time, is to go back to them waiting for something to do. Although in this case, some of those times I didn't actually have anything I knew I was supposed to do. But then as time went on, I get more familiar with how to stay busy and how to just continue on going around the area. And then eventually I decided not to stay there because they really didn't have enough work for me and the type of work I was doing. He wanted to make me a part of the regular cycle or a rotation of either being a cashier or being in the deli, and that. So they had a different rotation like that, and I really didn't want to be part of that rotation. I felt like I'd be confined in the store, so I went and got an office job. Anyway, then I went to college. So, but while I was working at the store, though, because I wasn't part of the rotation, actually, my hours were cut. So then I started working with my uncle. I worked with my uncle for just a few months, maybe in construction, which is not really my thing, but I worked it anyway and got through it. I don't know how much of a help I was actually to him. But then I was also washing cars at a car dealership. So there was a point in time I had 3 different part-time jobs, just a day or two here, a couple days with one, or a few hours with another. But the point is that there were things when washing cars, I found out, okay, is there a particular portion they want me to work on, or certain cars they want me to work on? I would just go down the line, bring the cars in. If it was wintertime and cold, just bring the cars in and wash them up. Try to pick the dirtiest ones, I guess. It was always a never-ending. It was always a losing battle, it seemed like, because they're always getting dirty. But then they had a pickup truck with a big tank on it, and during the nicer weather, just go down through and be spraying them off and washing them. And so in that case, it was easy just to go down through and just go down the line, unless they had one that was being sold and that needed to be more thoroughly detailed. I was not a full-fledged detailer, but there was once in a while I got to clean out some cars, some used cars that were being sold. But there are things that when in jobs like that and employment like that, the most productive way to do it is to recognize the things that need to be done. And I'll just say, I have not historically in my life been the best self-starter and self-motivator. That's not. There are people who are better at motivating themselves and being a self-starter than I am, and I've had to try to really grow in that area over the years. But that's the way the ant is. We can learn from the ant because the ant has self-motivation and self-direction that the ant does not have to constantly be told, okay, here's what to do. Now, God embedded the ant with the instincts to know what to do. But in the way that they operate throughout day to day, the ants, they just go about their business. Now, they all work together. They still work together. And so it's not that each ant is just, well, I'm my own person. No, actually, the reason they're able to accomplish so much is because they're all in these large colonies, and they do a lot of things together. So it's not being a self-motivator and having self-direction is not simply doing everything yourself. I mean, you think about the ant that gets the, finds the food. This is really more of what the self-motivation and self-direction is. The ants are out looking for food. And that ant stumbles upon the Reitenbach household and crumbs that were left on the floor. Russ doesn't have any problems with ants, maybe. I don't know. Denise might have any problems with ants. You probably have ants. And no, many people have problems with ants. And with 1.5 million ants per person, there's a good reason why you deal with ants so much. But no, ants are very common. Why? Because they're always on the move. They're always looking for things. They're always looking for food. And so try being that one ant who just happens to stumble upon that good food. They get to lay their chemicals down, whatever secretions from their body, and lead the rest of the rest of them back to it. And then, but what are they doing? They're motivated. They get things done. They get things done. They are self-directed in the sense that they can work well without having someone standing over them to make sure they're getting done what needs to be done. Make sure they're getting done what needs to be done. So great lessons we can learn from the ant in that way. There are other ways of the ant, not just the self-motivation and self-direction, but also preparation and provision. In verse 8, provideth, says, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. And so the ants are there at the right times of year, accomplishing what they need to, harvesting and gathering. I mean, just imagine, I wonder what it's like during the time when they can't find food. They're getting their food ahead of time. They're getting their food during the summer and the harvest time, and they're bringing in the food. Provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. Now I was reading something, it says her, and I was just reading something about the ant, that the male's only job is to mate with the queen. That's what I was reading. The male's only job are to mate with the queen. And so the rest of the workers, I believe, if I read that correctly, are females. Are females. Does that sound right? Does anybody know anything about the ant? I was reading that. That's what I read, but I didn't read too deeply into it. So it says her. And so the workers are females. And it said the thing I was reading said the males have wings, and their only job is to mate with the queen. So that's their job. But it says her here in the scripture, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. There is preparation and provision that goes into the work and life of the ant. Once again, God's the one who created the ant with that proportion of muscles that they're able to carry up to 50 times their body weight. We are not built that way. So God's ultimately the one who built the ant that way. But God built the ant that way so He could give us this example in Scripture. That yes, we don't have to carry 50 times our own body weight, but there should be preparation and provision in our work and in our lives. Oftentimes, and I've been learning this over the years more and more, and been seeing this, that a lot of things, a lot of the work we do now is really in preparation, or at least should be with a forward look for something that's coming ahead. It should be done with the future in mind. The ants, they take their food in during the summer and harvest. Why is that? Because you're not going to find any food during the wintertime. You're not going to find any food during the wintertime, and because the ants don't go to the grocery store and buy their food at the grocery store like we can. I like seeing the different places where blueberries come from during the summer when it's blueberry season, and it's good, especially good when the price is lower, and buy blueberries. So I like watching the progression. There's certain times a year when things grow. We have the luxury of the supermarkets that ship get things shipped in from all over the place. It starts, really blueberry season in the U.S. If you notice on the packages, and I look at the packages, call me weird, but I look at the packages to see where the blueberries are from. And some of the blueberries were from California, at least. They don't say they were grown in California, but the company was from California. I'm guessing they must grow some blueberries out there in certain parts of California. I wouldn't think that's the best place to grow blueberries. But first of all, when the blueberry season ramps up, it starts in Florida. You look at the package and you see it's the company's from Florida. And not everything, not every type of food, just because the company says it's from a certain state does not mean it came from there. But blueberries, that's pretty accurate when you look at that and it says Florida. And you go back to Stop and Shop or Aldi or whatever grocery store you like to go to, and you see then it's Georgia. And then I see North Carolina, a big blueberry producing state. And then later on, you see New Jersey. It's working its way north. You see New Jersey, a lot of blueberries in South Jersey. And then you'll see, let's see what's after New Jersey. I think Michigan. Michigan produces a lot of blueberries. And then you'll see some from Washington and British Columbia. And then I just got one that the company was from Oregon. But then over the wintertime, as we get into this fall and wintertime, then you'll start seeing blueberries from Chile. They'll ship them in from Chile. Now those don't taste as good as the ones from the U.S. Because, I don't know if it's because they've been stored longer or they're not as fresh probably. But you'll see that that's the progression. And then next year it'll start all over again. But the ant doesn't have that luxury. And there are things in life where we don't have that luxury either, because God has entrusted us with each day and each week and each month to really be productive. And I've tried to get wrap my mind more around of really thinking further and further ahead in my planning. Not in a way that's being presumptuous upon the Lord's will or the Lord allowing things to happen, but if the Lord wills and if the Lord tarries, thinking about, I'm thinking about, okay, next year, how am I going to schedule things in the church calendar for next year? And there's sometimes pastors, this is October, there's probably pastors who start that in July, most likely. I don't know, but some start that way ahead of time. And so I was in Staples the other day, I was looking for a planner. And I don't actually put a lot of things in my phone or on the computer for planners. I like to write it down. I just like to have that calendar right in front of me and just get the scope, just look at it. But their planners just keep getting more and more expensive every year. I think part of it is they're becoming a rare commodity because everybody does things on their devices. But I like having the planner. And why? Because it's good to plan things out ahead of time. Oftentimes when we fly by the seat of our pants, we get less accomplished because we haven't really put thought into what am I going to do? What are we going to do? Preparation and provision. Provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. And then we see number 3. We see, first of all, number 1, the student of the ant should be the sluggard, but we all can learn from the ant. Number 2, we see the ways of the ant, that the ant is a self-motivator and is good at directing herself. And then preparation and provision for herself and the colony. And then number 3, an admonition and warning to the sluggard. An admonition and warning to the sluggard. So there's first the getting the attention of the sluggard. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Here's what you can learn from the ant, but now here's the warning to the sluggard if the sluggard does not heed this lesson, if the sluggard does not learn from this. In verse 9, how long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Even sleep is something that can be used for good or bad in our lives. Sleep is a wonderful thing. The Bible talks about us laying down in peace and laying down in safety and dwelling in safety, and your sleep shall be sweet. That's if you're not a sluggard. If a person's a sluggard, God wants them to get up and get moving and doing something, because they're being still too much, too sedentary. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? In other words, they're taking this sleep to the extreme. They're not just getting the sleep that's just healthy for their bodies. They're going to the extreme where it's actually going to be a detriment to them. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. Now I thought, there were times I thought this verse 11 was talking about, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth. I thought that if all you do is travel, you run out of money. So that may be true, but that's not what the verse means, because traveling is expensive. If all you did was just travel and you weren't making money, you'd spend a lot of money on hotels and fuel and all kinds of things. But no, what happens? What happens when a person is slothful? What happens when a person is sluggard? It results in poverty. Think about how much can you get accomplished just laying around, just sleeping all day? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man, means that just suddenly and unexpectedly, just the poverty comes. They might be going along fine for a while, and then all of a sudden, boom, they wake up and think, what happened? I am in a mess. I have not been, I'm running out of money. I'm running out of food or whatever it may be. And a lot of the conveniences, technological conveniences in our culture are built to encourage slothfulness and being a sluggard. I think of the video game industry. Now, there's nothing wrong with certain video games in and of themselves, but this video game industry is a really big industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. So, they have a slogan like, I think it was PlayStation had a slogan like, greatness awaits. I mean, like you're going to achieve greatness by accomplishing all these things in your video games. Now that's appealing to a lot of people because they want to achieve greatness, but it's all in a superficial fantasy way. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is I've heard that there was a pizza, I think it was Domino's Pizza, had an app for, it might not have been PlayStation, it might have been the Xbox. They made an Xbox app so that people could order pizza right from their Xbox. So you don't even have to go out of your Xbox to order pizza. You can keep playing your video game, order pizza from your Xbox, and have it delivered to your door, and you don't have to go anywhere or do anything. You just never miss a beat, hardly. All you have to do is just think about, what kind of pizza do I want? And your payment information, that's probably already in there. Who knows? So there's a lot of things that are nice and convenient, but they also lend themselves to not having to put forth the effort to do something. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. There's nothing to be ashamed of when a person is working their hardest and is really trying to do what's right, and they might have a hard time getting by. There are a lot of people like that. They work, and things happen, or they just, expenses build up and pile up, and they're really trying. But there's a difference between that and someone who is just a sluggard, a slothful. They just won't work. They just won't work. They just won't put forth the effort. They just won't have motivation. They just won't have the direction, self-direction. They won't put some thought into preparation and provision. And that results in poverty, and it's not something to be proud of. It's not something to wear as a badge of honor. And oftentimes, and I'll tell you what the issue I have with much of government welfare is. I realize there's people who do truly need help in some way, shape, or form, whether it's from the government, church, others, whoever it may be. There are people who truly need help. But what I've noticed over time is when people, the more and more entitlements and welfare that people are able to get, it actually affects their thinking. It actually affects how they think. They are not as motivated because they get dependent on that, they get reliant on that, and then they just turn around and start expecting it. So it actually changes the thinking. And so I was actually just talking to my former boss there in Pennsylvania, the owner of the store. We were bringing this up, talking about, I think it was about my wife's health. And I said, you know, I told him what we're doing for health coverage, and then I also said about how we try to avoid. We've never taken any type of food stamps or anything, or WIC or anything like that, even though certainly for much of the time in our marriage we probably would have been eligible for something. And a lot of that, the very first and foremost reason is the moment I then start relying on the government to provide my daily sustenance, I am now taking God out of the equation. Because now, well, government's got it covered. I don't need to ask God for these things. I don't need to trust God for these things. I don't need to work as hard for these things. And it takes away the opportunity for God to do something great, for God to provide in a way that you only see God providing. But the other motivation, the other reason is, first of all, I don't want to use other people's tax money or debt of the government to buy my own groceries. Now, if someone wants to donate money or a gift card, I take those. You know, it's a gift. It's a free will gift. When I file my taxes in the year, there's times we've been blessed with refunds, and has that helped us out a lot? Absolutely. But I'm not seeking out welfare. That's just the way the system is built, the tax system. So there's a difference there. But it changes people's thinking. And my former boss, my former employer there, he told me about how there was a guy who came to the checkout counter and he bought, he said Easter eggs. I don't know if he meant chocolate eggs or what these were, but he bought 32 of them or something. And he pulls out a Pennsylvania food stamp card. And so he walks away, buys that, walks away, and another guy turned to him and said, I had a feeling I was paying for those, he said. But poverty comes, and it can be hard for people to get out of that, snap out of that poverty mentality of just being depressed. And you know, it can be depressing when you don't feel like you have the freedom or liberty to have your needs met and just without worrying about it. And that's why God wants us to cast our care upon Him. But many of us are blessed. Many of us are blessed. I think about how blessed we are that every month that goes by and I think, wow, the bills are still paid. The bills for this month are still paid. God's still blessed. God is still provided. Have I had to work for it? Certainly. Do we sometimes have to cut corners? Do you have to cut on things? You know, I told someone if money were no object, I'd do all my grocery shopping at Stop and Shop. And I know some people are big Y people, and that's fine, but I personally like Stop and Shop. If money were no object, I would just go buy all our groceries at Stop and Shop. But we can't do that. We go to Aldi. Go to these places that still get more reasonable prices. But slothfulness results in poverty. You know, there are times that people have a hard time making ends meet, and they're still trying and they're still working. And you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of in that they are putting forth the effort. They may not have the education or the type of training or the job that might give them a really high salary, a high income, but they're still working at it. But you know, the sluggard and the slothful person just has no motivation, no drive to do that. And that is an admonition and a warning to the sluggard. Your poverty is going to come suddenly. It's going to come unexpectedly. You can't keep going like this. Consider the ant, to learn some lessons from the ant. Have some self-motivation. Have some self-direction, preparation and provision for your life. And for a person who's got a family, for the life of their family. And so we can learn these lessons from the ant. And I hope there's nobody here that would be a full-fledged sluggard, full-fledged slothful person. But one of the reasons my wife and I go to the effort, and my wife especially being there at home more than I am, goes to the effort to try to keep our kids busy with a lot of things is, you know, we don't have a big property or anything where they can go out and do yard work and all these other things, but just keep them busy with some sort of productive work so they don't grow up not being used to working. It's going to be a really bad thing if that's the case. It's a whole lot easier to start working from a younger age, and nothing that's unreasonable, nothing that's depriving them of a childhood, but we just have to do our work. We have to do these things that need to be done. But let's have the motivation and the direction and preparation and provision for our lives to go forward, put forth the effort. Is sleep important? Oh, it certainly is. We don't want to burn ourselves out. But not the sleep. We don't want to sleep the sleep of the slothful. We don't want to sleep the sleep of the sluggard. We don't want to sleep the sleep of the person who has no motivation or drive to really get anything done. And you know, if we need some help in having that motivation, well, what's the point? What's the use? Well, remember this, God wants us to do everything heartily. Whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. We're not doing it for man, we're doing it ultimately for God. And when we do it for God, we will automatically be doing it for man. We will meet our obligations to man, meet our responsibilities to man when we are doing it for God. So let's examine our lives tonight. I have to examine my life once in a while and say, you know, am I really putting forth the effort into this, or am I just trying to get by? And there's times sometimes I feel like, well, I'm not able to put forth the effort into things just because I got so many irons in the fire, so many things on my plate. Okay, what can I do to get some of those irons cleared up so I can put forth the whole effort into everything that I'm doing? What is it in your life? What lesson does God want to teach you from the ant? What can we apply in our lives? Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Consider her ways and be wise. Recognize that the ant's way is better. Have the wisdom to actually apply it then. Not just to know it, not just to go and consider, but then also to apply it. And if you know a sluggard, if you know a sloth, you can give them a simple outline. Go, think, do. Go, think, and do. Go to the ant, think about what you need to do, think about the ant's example, and then go do it. Go put it into practice. Simple Bible outline from Proverbs chapter 6. Let's